when it comes to media, I think you have to understand what makes a good story. You need to understand why those journalists tell those stories. A lot of people talk about the journalists and the media as if they have some sort of scheme sometimes, that they're out to support one group and not another, or one slant and not another. And while that's true in some cases, often journalists are just, I think, under the gun. They have a lot to do, very short time, news budgets have been shrinking, they need to get their story out. So it's important for you to know what they need, which is real stories that appeal to their audiences, and to deliver those things that they need, the real quotes, deliver them quickly, promptly, and in a way that they can use. I think all of us have seen press releases and press kits where the language just doesn't seem human. It seems it's corporate speak, or a canned quote. And I like to follow certain journalists. I want to know the stories that they're writing. I want to know how they approach things. I approach them and ask them what they're looking for. Often I'll do that without doing a pitch, without even thinking about a pitch. I just want to know what they need, what they're looking for. And if it fits with what, if their audience fits my audience, then you try to give them what they need. I don't pitch a lot of stories. I don't pitch a lot of stories. I don't send a lot of press releases, and this would sometimes get me in some trouble with my managers and executives. There are people that just want to send press releases on every little thing, a meeting, you know, a conference, a this or that, that really isn't news. News is news. News is news unless it's a very strong human interest story. The latest conference is not news unless it's an unbelievable conference. The latest announcement of an executive is usually not news. So I've had some grief from executives who go, well, you should send a press release on that. And I say it's not news, and they kind of take a bit of umbrage to it. But I tend to be select, so when I do send a pitch or make a pitch to a certain journalist that I know or have been following, they have some assurance that I put some thought into it, that I think it's a real story, and that they're going to think that through as something that they may want to explore. A few other tips, just thinking off the top of my head. It's okay to not have an answer. It's very okay. It's better to not have an answer and say you don't have an answer than to give an answer that's either not true or just sort of made up and something that could bite you later and get you in trouble. Say that you'll get back to them with an answer if you don't have the answer. I make sure that the journalists know that if I do, that I have high quality photos. I love photography personally, and so I like taking good pictures, and I have found, certainly with lower budget media, if you can provide really, really good photos, they often will take your story. Similarly to video footage, if you have really good video footage that they could package in a way that they can use as part of their story, I think that's really, really helpful. Also, if you know a story really matches a particular media outlet or journalist, you can tell them that it's an exclusive, that we would like to give this story, we've given it to no one else. I've done that a few times with good success. I think sending a blanket press release or a blanket pitch to everyone isn't always the best option. You're often not going to get picked up, so why not, you know, go for, there's my cat again, sorry, why not go for the key journalist who you know will be interested in that topic. So I don't know how long you want these answers, so I'll try to keep them fairly brief. So let's see, your next one. Once you've developed a relationship with a journalist, over a period of time, do interviews become easier or more difficult? I would say easier. I would say that they become easier. You know what they need, they know what I can offer and what I need. Just remember, there is no such thing as off the record. Even if something is off the record and you say it and they don't use it, it still informs how they think about you or your organization or the topic that you're pushing. Be honest, be human, don't say no comment. Just say, I don't know, if you don't have an answer. So yeah, I think having a relationship with a journalist certainly helps. I mean, they're not going to come to the well too many times in a row, but over time it's really good. I developed a few relationships with some journalists when I was at CUSO International, with Toronto Sun. What elements make a successful media interview? Let's see. What makes a successful media interview? Certainly you have to prepare. You have to know your stuff, whatever topic it is, international volunteering, an environment issue. Know your stuff as best you can. And again, I earlier said that it's good to be a synthesizer, and that's where this comes in handy. You can't be an expert at everything, but you do have to make yourself aware of the issues. The second thing I would say is prepare for the tough questions. I always do this, especially if there's something controversial or potentially controversial or contentious. You want to anticipate all the questions. The difficult ones would be good to know in advance how you will respond. And in fact, it can be dangerous if you haven't practiced these out. And practice them out. Talk in the car, talk in the shower, practice them out. When I worked at CUSO International, wouldn't do. So I try to not get sucked into what if questions or A and B, if this happens and this happens. You hear people say this all the time, politicians, but everyone else. I don't speak in hypothetical. I don't speak to hypothetical questions. Not a bad rule. Remember, there's no such thing as off the record. We talked about that earlier, but there really isn't. Same as, I think you should never say no comment. You could just say I don't know, or I hadn't thought of it, or whatever, but don't say no comment. The moment you say no comment, it sort of implies that you're guilty or you've got something to hide. And specific questions related to the not-for-profit environment. And the first one is, what other things should the PR practitioner take into consideration when working for a government-funded, not-for-profit agency? That's interesting, government-funded. That can, of course, be a challenge because, especially if you're involved in advocacy, the whole bite the hand that feeds you phenomenon, you want to be careful about that, but at the same time you don't want to not tell your truth and not tell the important points about your issue. But other things that you should keep in mind as a practitioner in that environment, a PR person has to know that staff at nonprofits are usually overloaded. They usually have capacity issues. They usually don't make a lot of money. Certainly in Nova Scotia, I know the stats. We have a highly educated nonprofit workforce. Highly educated, like around almost 80% have at least one degree. They have a lot of experience, but they're paid really, really badly. In Nova Scotia, it's below the national average for other nonprofits. So you have to recognize that. I think any consultant that goes in, because I've been on the receiving end, consultants can sometimes go in and assume that there's an ideas deficit, that the staff of the nonprofit just don't have the ideas. And it's almost never an ideas deficit. It's almost always a capacity and resources deficit. So just keep that in mind. Workload issues. They have to worry about questions of lobbying and advocacy. There's rules, especially if you're a registered charity, you can only do a certain amount of advocacy without putting your charitable status at risk. So you need to know that. The nonprofit world often does have a real deep culture of consensus and participation, which is a great thing. I mean, we should participate, we should have consensus, we should build discussions and everything. Another question, how does a not-for-profit's limited budget affect the work of the PR practitioner? Again, it can be good or bad. If you're trying to do a massive campaign across the country, yeah, no budget's not going to be a great bit of news for you. However, a low budget can sometimes force the nonprofit and the PR practitioner to really be creative. You can't just throw money at it. You really can't. You can't just you can't just throw money at a problem and expect it to be fixed. You don't have the money, so you have to be creative. You have to find the real stories and communicate in real ways that will really touch people. So it can be good It can be good. You also have to involve other people. You have to create partnerships. You have to involve your audiences. Certainly these days you can get people to become content producers for you. So it forces you to do all those things because you have no choice.